Alright, welcome back to another exciting issue of Paideia training. This actually can apply to several different courses that I teach, so I hope it'll be useful to several people. It's in fact a tactic that I have found very helpful in academic life for quite a number of years, and that is extracting notes and writing summaries. If we think about it, a great deal of what we do in an academic environment, it deals with reading something, pulling information out of it, and making sure that we can summarize it. I want to take a quick look here at a Google Drive where I keep several things. Let's see what we're looking for, and that would be book summaries. And if you notice here, I've got a number of different documents in here, which almost, they do show that my notation of titles and authors is not exactly foolproof or consistent. However, we've got authors and titles of books that I've read in the last few years here. You can see that there are quite a number of them, and within each one of them there are various summaries that can talk about different topics. Normally I've arranged them by chapters. So for example, here's a church history book that I've written. You'll see some dates here and there because on different days I've posted some items on my blog, so I just keep track of what I've done when in the document sometimes. You see that there's a reference to the exact text that I'm looking at. You see also that we're able to refer to page numbers or locations very specifically, and so it is a useful way of keeping track of notes over a period of time. Eventually you're able to build up rather a stockpile of different items already written down. Who knows when you might need a paragraph about something and you say, oh no, didn't so-and-so book talk about this, and you look it up and bingo, there it is. I do remember once impressing a theology professor who said something about, I wish I could remember there was something that caused such and such a council to break up early, but I'm not sure I can prove it. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I happen to remember it in this particular book, and I opened my notes and I skimmed through the notes, and I did have some information about it, although I was not able to point to a specific page number. I was able to point to a particular range of pages. It was very helpful to have those notes. All right, so how are we going to do this? Let's get an example of what to do. I have a text that I've been studying and reading some. This is a book by an ancient author. His name is Quintilian. It's the Institutes of Oratory, written by, I honestly forget what Quintilian's other names are. He's universally known as Quintilian. I found this book, Institutes of Oratory, and I looked up the exact information at the citation machine. Let's get a quick look at that, and I believe I was using Turabian format because that was the standard of the seminary where I went. And let's just see how it's possible to do this. We can go Quintilian And that's about enough for this individual, I believe. Let's search books that have quintillion. And which one was it that I was looking at? You know, I don't remember exactly. Watson translation and Honeycutt editor. Let's put those search criteria in there. Just say Watson, Honeycutt. I'll look at this. We were able to find it. And we can create a citation, and it'll put it pretty close to being in the right format. And so I can lift it from the citation machine, and I can go over here. You see the edition that I used did say who the editor was, and I was able to specify, yes, this is the Kindle edition. And the chapter I'm looking at just today happens to be in Book 7. There are 12 books of Quintillion's Institutes, and I'm in Chapter 4 of Book 7. Something that you notice is, at least with some older documents, they'll be divided by book and chapter, and then paragraph within a chapter. You see the little 1, and here the 2, and down a little bit lower the 3. And so I'm going to use that method for citing the location in this text. If it were a book that didn't have some sort of clear division like that everybody pretty much agreed on, I would certainly use page numbers, or in a Kindle edition, I would use location. Well, as I read, what I need to do is make some notes about what I'm reading. So, for instance, here, let's make this window just a little bit littler, and that'll fit just fine. So we begin reading, and when we're making notes, what we want to realize is that, I'm sorry, I've just taken some of my tools away there. What we want to realize is that notes won't necessarily be complete sentences, and they probably certainly won't be whole paragraphs. But for instance, I realized right at the beginning, the text is talking about what it calls arguments of quality, and I thought, okay, what is an argument of quality? And as I read within this first segment, I saw that the question is really, what is the quality of something being considered? Now notice this reference I gave it. Book 7, you see the Roman numeral 7. The period tells me I'm looking at some other unit, chapter 4, and it's in paragraph 1, where I find the argument of quality. I keep reading, find out what's happening next. I see that in chapter 4, paragraph 2, it's normally used in deliberative oratory. That's something Quintilian has described earlier. So for this purpose, I'm really not going to define it, because I know what it is, and I know that we can find it another time if we need to. He says it's also used in the demonstrative and in the penalty phase of a court case, and he says that, notice, in Book 7, Chapter 4, Section 3. He says a little bit later on here, in Section 4, he points out, you see here, we're at the bottom of the page, and we're ready to move a little bit farther, ready to move to the next page. But he points out that justifying of actions can be categorized under the quality of the actions. Is there something that caused you to do something? And Quintilian has this habit, which I've noticed quite clearly through almost a couple hundred pages of his writing, that he'll give a number of examples. So I put in my notes, several examples follow, and in fact we can see examples going on for a considerable distance as we read the text. And we find then after his examples, on another page here, he seems to wrap things up here in chapter 4, section 13. You see a little bit of a transition statement. Such are the modes of proceeding in defense of an act, but if a defense can neither be sustained on the motive of the act itself, nor by extrinsic aid, our next course, in other words, what are we going to do if that doesn't work, is to transfer the charge, if we find it possible, on another party. What did I pull into my notes? This is an important statement, and so I kept Quintilian's wording, and I put it in quotation marks, because that way I know this is a direct quote. I wouldn't want to steal someone else's work. So I cite the quotation, and I say exactly where it is. Quintilian 7, chapter 4, section 13. That's close enough. We'll be able to find it. It only covers about 2.5 inches on the page. And as we kept reading, the next thing I put in a note about is another quotation, which is also in 13. Should these modes of defense fail us, there remains excuse founded either on ignorance or on necessity. In other words, if the charge actually has some quality, and I can't get rid of that and say it's just ridiculous, I try to make someone else responsible for it, and otherwise I will try to find an excuse for the person who did something. These are common pieces of courtroom argument. Now, some people, Quintilian says, would suggest, and he says this in section 15, down here near the bottom of this page, some people would suggest that this is a matter of quantity. There was not enough crime to be counted, rather than quality. It was not serious enough to be counted. However, Quintilian points out, quantity is often tied to the quality of the deed. All right. Well, he's going to talk about something else next. He's going to talk about another defense known as deprecation. And you see, he's going to talk about it in chapter 4, section 17. Let's see if I can jump there. The last method of all is deprecation, a mode of address which most rhetoricians do not allow to be admissible into judicial pleadings. In other words, you really don't want to use this. It is a last resort, but sometimes it might work. And he states, and I chose to quote it here in section 18, it sometimes derives its greatest efficacy from the character of the accused himself, if it appear from his previous life that there are these 3 kinds of merit in him. These are 3 tests that he's going to give. Number 1, he's lived innocently. Number 2, he's been useful to others. And number 3, that he affords expectation that he'll conduct himself blamelessly in the future. So maybe the charge is invalid because he's really just a good and useful guy. Well, Quintilian goes ahead and he tells us that really deprecation is awfully close to questions of equity. And a question of equity asks, is it a fair situation? Now, that's a very good question to ask in a court of law. Is it fair for this problem to show up? And then he does that. He actually doesn't get to that until Chapter 4, Sections 25 and 26. But then he really continues giving examples of equity all the way to the end of the chapter. It's a couple more pages. And there we go. Well, we've read the chapter, we've gotten to the end of it, and we've extracted some notes. Let's get the book out of the way now. We have a page of notes, and those notes are, I don't know, somewhere around 200 to 220 pages, or words, not pages. What we're going to do then is take our notes and we're going to rearrange them and rewrite just a little bit so that we're actually writing in sentences and paragraphs. You notice what I do throughout the writing here. Where there's a citation, I put it in parentheses following the standard bibliographic format. Quintillion, this is the only writing actually which survives by Quintillion, so it always refers to Quintillion's Institutes of Oratory. And I give the book and the chapter and the section in parentheses. That's a standard way to do something in a paper. You notice the punctuation for that part of the sentence comes after the parentheses, like here. And like here. You see the quotation closes, then parentheses, Quintillion 7, 4, 13, close parentheses, period. There's the end of the sentence. And so what we've done is we've taken a text, we've taken some notes, and then we've written up a summary of what we took notes about. Well, then we can get rid of our notes if we want. And the summary, I have already written it. I have edited it at least a little bit. If I were going to turn it in to somebody, I'd check it more. I'd probably tighten up the language a little bit. Let's take a look at our word count and see how big this is. 341 words, it said. So if I give you an assignment of 200 to 250 words, if you turn in 341 words, I'm going to try to cut some out. For the time being, I'm going to leave this, but I'm sure I could get rid of at least 50 or 60 words of it, and maybe 90 words if I tried really hard. Anyway, there we go. We've written a summary based on a chapter that we've read. We've extracted notes and written a summary. We've got something that we are ready to turn in, and then your teacher would be ready to look at it and check everything out and make it all nice. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you need any help.